What happens when power is pushed too far? When a man who's used to commanding every room suddenly feels cornered under the spotlight. Cameras were rolling, lights blinding, and the tension so thick you could almost hear it hum. This wasn't just another political interview. It was a showdown between control and confrontation. Moments before it all unraveled, you could see it in his eyes. Donald Trump wasn't backing down, but neither was the host. And in that split second, a calm conversation turned into one of the most talked about walkouts in television history. It started like any other high-profile interview. The studio was alive, cameras sliding across rails, producers whispering into headsets, and the audience buzzing with that electric mix of curiosity and tension. Everyone knew this wasn't just another guest. When Donald Trump walks into a room, the atmosphere shifts, energy tightens, eyes focus, and every movement suddenly matters. Trump entered confidently, that signature stride, calm, deliberate, commanding. Pam Bondi walked beside him, sharp and composed, like a strategist already reading 10 moves ahead. The host, seated at center stage, wore a look halfway between respect and challenge. You could sense it immediately. This wasn't going to be a soft conversation. As the lights dimmed and the intro music faded, the cameras locked in. Trump adjusted his cufflinks, leaned forward, and flashed that half smile, the one that says, "Let's begin." The host greeted him warmly, but the tone underneath hinted at something else, something sharper. In that moment, before the first question was even asked, you could feel the stage had already been set. The tension wasn't loud, that it was heavy, like the quiet before a storm. At first, everything felt controlled, almost too controlled. The host opened with safe, familiar ground, the economy, leadership, the upcoming election. Trump leaned back slightly, answering with the ease of someone who's done this dance 1,000 times, his voice steady, his tone measured. You could see it, the confidence of a man who's been under brighter lights, tougher cameras, and louder critics. Pam Bondi sat just off to the side, watching closely. Every question, every pause, she read like a chess player scanning the board. When the host tried steering toward sensitive territory, Bondi subtly intervened, redirecting, reframing, protecting the message. Together, they worked in perfect rhythm, like a team that knew exactly where every trap might be hiding. The audience at first seemed impressed. Some nodded along as Trump spoke about rebuilding strength, restoring pride, and putting America first. The words were familiar, almost comforting to his supporters. And that was the point. He wanted control. He wanted calm. But under that calm, something was brewing. You could feel it in the pacing, the host's tone sharpening just slightly, each question a little more pointed than the last. Trump smiled through it, that trademark grin that says, "I see what you're doing." But his eyes, they told a different story. There was a storm building behind them, quiet but growing. Every answer, every carefully chosen word was another step closer to something neither side could walk back. And then, the tone shifted. And that's when the tone shifted. The host leaned forward, just slightly, but enough to change everything. The smile faded, the air thickened. "Let's talk about accountability," the host said, voice low, but deliberate. Those words cut through the calm like a blade. Trump's expression didn't change right away. He paused, straightened his tie, and gave that small, knowing smirk, the one that says, "Here we go." Pam Bondi glanced over, sensing the turn before it fully landed. She shifted forward, ready. The host continued, questions now sharper, more personal. "Do you believe accountability applies equally, even to those in power?" The phrasing was surgical, and Trump knew exactly where it was headed. He fired back with practiced confidence. "No one's been more transparent than us. No one's been under more scrutiny." His voice was firm, almost rehearsed, but his voice carried a spark, that edge that appears when control begins to slip. Bondi stepped in quickly, cutting through with calm precision. "What you're seeing here isn't journalism, it's theater." The audience stirred. Some clapped, others murmured. The balance had shifted again, and no one was sure which way it would fall. But the host pressed on, not missing a beat. If leadership means strength, then doesn't it also mean admitting when something goes wrong? Trump's smile faded. You want me to stand here and trash myself for your ratings? His tone cracked with controlled anger. Every word landed heavy. Bondi tried to steer things back to policy, but it was too late. The focus had shifted from facts to emotion, from questions to confrontation. The host leaned back, almost satisfied, while Trump leaned forward, voice rising, hands cutting through the air as he spoke. What started as a conversation about leadership had become a test of it. Every second that passed felt like a tug of war, not just for control of the interview, but for the narrative itself. You could feel the tension humming through the studio. Supporters saw defiance, critics saw defensiveness, but everyone saw the same thing, the mask of composure beginning to crack. And then, with one question, the calm shattered completely. And then it happened, the moment that flipped the entire room. The host leaned in, voice calm but cutting. If you truly believe in accountability, then name one decision, just one, that you would do differently. The air went still. Even the studio lights seemed to burn quieter. Trump didn't answer right away. He stared, not at the host, not at the cameras, but somewhere just past them, like he was deciding whether this moment was worth engaging in. Then, with that unmistakable tone, half disbelief, half defiance, he said, "You want me to trash myself on your show for your audience?" The audience gasped softly. Bondi shifted, whispering something under her breath, but Trump wasn't done. He leaned forward, voice rising just enough to fill the silence. "I've built more, achieved more, and fought harder for this country than anyone sitting in this chair, and you want me to say I do something differently? No, I stand by everything." The host didn't flinch. "Even the controversies?" they asked. Trump snapped back instantly, especially those, because they weren't controversies, they were attacks from people like you. The crowd murmured again, caught between tension and disbelief. Bondi tried to intervene, her tone sharp but composed. "This isn't about truth anymore, it's about optics." But the host spoke over her, pushing harder, "Or maybe it's about accountability finally catching up." That's when Trump stood up, slow, deliberate, unblinking. "I'm not here to play your little game," he said. "This interview's over." Bondi rose beside him. The studio erupted, producers scrambling, audience whispering, the host trying to regain order, but it was too late. The line had been crossed. Trump pulled off his mic, tossed it on the chair, and glared at the cameras. "You wanted a headline, you just got one." And then he walked off. The room fell into stunned silence. For a split second, it wasn't clear if Trump was serious or if this was just another power move. But then he tore off his microphone, the sharp click echoing through the studio. Every camera locked on him. Every producer froze. The host tried to speak, but Trump cut through the noise with that unmistakable voice, low, firm, final. "You think you can trap me with your questions? You think this is about accountability?" he said, pointing toward the host. "This is about ratings. This is about ambush journalism, and I'm done with it." The host stayed seated, eyes steady, refusing to look away. "Mr. Trump," they said carefully, "this is your chance to show leadership, not walk away from it." Trump turned halfway to the door and glared back. "Leadership," he said, "is knowing when to stand up and when to walk out." The audience gasped, some clapped, others murmured in disbelief. Bondi followed close behind, her expression unreadable, but her pace matched his, calm, certain, controlled. The host, regaining composure, looked straight into the camera. "Let the record show former President Trump has chosen to leave this interview." But Trump wasn't finished. He turned one last time toward the cameras, pointing directly into the lens. "This is why the people don't trust the media anymore. You twist, you provoke, and you call it news." And with that, he pushed through the studio doors, Bondi behind him, and the sound of the latch clicking shut echoed louder than anything that had been said.
The host sat in silence for a few beats before whispering, "We'll be right back after the break." But there was no going back. The moment had already gone viral. The door slammed shut, but the echo seemed to hang in the air. No one moved. The cameras were still rolling, red lights blinking, capturing every second of the stunned silence that followed. The host exhaled slowly, straightened their notes, and looked straight into the lens. "Let the record show," they said, voice calm but trembling slightly. The former president walked out when pressed on accountability. It wasn't gloating. It was disbelief wrapped in composure. Behind the scenes, you could hear quiet chaos. Producers whispering, stage managers waving frantically, someone asking if they were still live. But the host stayed perfectly still, almost frozen in the weight of what just happened. Moments later, Trump's voice echoed faintly from down the hallway. Firm, controlled, but angry. "That was a setup," he said, loud enough for the microphones to catch. Pam Bondi's heels clicked sharply behind him, her voice calmer. "You did the right thing. That wasn't journalism. It was an ambush." Back inside the studio, the host's expression softened. "We invited an open conversation. We didn't expect a walkout." Then they shuffled the papers again, a nervous habit, and added, "We'll let the viewers decide what they just witnessed." The camera panned slowly across the empty chairs, the microphone still lying where Trump had dropped it, a silent symbol of everything that had just exploded on live television. Seconds later, the feed cut to black. Within minutes of the walkout, the world had seen it. The clip, that tense standoff, that final stare, that sharp pull of the microphone, spread like wildfire. News networks interrupted broadcasts. Headlines appeared in real time. Trump walks out of explosive interview. Accountability question sparks chaos. Pam Bondi confronts host in fiery exchange. Across social media, the reactions split cleanly down the middle, a perfect reflection of the country itself. Supporters called it another media ambush. They said Trump had every right to leave, that he'd shown strength by refusing to bow to biased questions. When the lights finally dimmed and the studio fell silent, something larger than an interview had unfolded. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about power, about pride, about how truth itself fractures under the weight of ego and loyalty. In that room, under those blazing studio lights, we didn't just witness a walkout. We witnessed the breaking point between two visions of leadership, one that sees strength as never admitting fault, and another that believes true strength is in owning imperfection. Both sides left convinced they were right. And maybe that's the real tragedy, because when conviction hardens into refusal, dialogue dies. When every question becomes an attack, and every answer becomes a defense, nothing moves forward. Not politics, not trust, not the nation. Trump's final words still echo. "History will vindicate me." Maybe it will. Or maybe history will remember that moment for something else. A symbol of how accountability became confrontation, how questions became battlegrounds, and how truth became negotiable. The interview was supposed to last 30 minutes. Instead, it became a mirror, showing us not just the temperament of a man, but the temperament of a country. A place where every conversation is a fight, and every truth has two sides. So as the footage keeps looping online, as people argue in comment sections and pundits spin their narratives, one question remains unanswered. What happens to a democracy when no one can say, "I was wrong"? Fade to black. Title card appears. The interview that shook the room. So, after everything you just saw, the questions, the clash, the walkout, one thing's clear. This wasn't just an interview. It was a test of patience, of pride, of truth itself. The camera stopped rolling, but the argument didn't. It's still echoing across living rooms, newsrooms, and social feeds. Was Trump standing his ground or running from accountability? Was the host out of line or finally saying what others were too afraid to ask? Because depending on who you ask, This was either a trap or a moment of truth, a power move or a breaking point. And maybe that's the question that matters most. Whose version of the truth are we living in now? If you've got an answer, drop it below. Tell me where you stand. And don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't the last time Trump will face the fire, and the next moment might just change everything. But critics saw something entirely different. They said the moment revealed what many had long suspected, that when pressed for accountability, Trump deflected, blamed, and ran. Commentators on late-night shows replayed the footage in slow motion, dissecting every word, every twitch, every silence. One headline read simply, "The day the cameras caught everything." Pam Bondi appeared on several networks by evening, defending the walkout. "This wasn't an interview," she said firmly. "It was a cross-examination, a political hit job. No leader should tolerate that kind of disrespect." Meanwhile, the host released a statement of their own. "We asked clear, fair questions about accountability. The choice to walk out says more than any answer could ever." And just like that, both sides had their narrative. Both sides claimed victory, and the truth got buried somewhere in between. For some, the moment was proof of bias. For others, it was proof of fear. But for everyone watching, it was unforgettable. The kind of confrontation that becomes part of the national memory. Replayed in classrooms, analyzed by pundits, turned into clips, memes, and endless arguments. And as the dust settled, one question lingered louder than any headline.